Rewrite the expression 4 times, then in parentheses we have 8 plus 3, using the distributive law of multiplication over addition. Then simplify the expression. So let's just try to solve this or evaluate this expression, and then we'll talk a little bit about the distributive law of multiplication over addition, usually just called the distributive law. So we have 4 times 8, 4 times 8 plus 8 plus 3. 8 plus 3. Now there's two ways to do it. Normally when you have parentheses, your inclination is, well, let me just evaluate what's in the parentheses first and then worry about what's outside of the parentheses. And we can do that fairly easily here. We can evaluate what 8 plus 3 is. 8 plus 3 is 11. So if we do that, let me do that in this direction. So if we do that, we get 4 times, and in parentheses we have an 11. 8 plus 3 is 11. And then this is going to be equal to, well, 4 times 11 is just 44. So you can evaluate it that way, but they want us to use the distributive law of multiplication. We did not use the distributive law just now. We just evaluated the expression, we used the parentheses first, then multiplied by 4. In the distributive law, we multiply by 4 first. And it's called the distributive law because you distribute the 4, and we're going to think about what that means. So in the distributive law, what this will become, it'll become 4 times 8 plus 4 times 3. And we're going to think about why that is in a second. So this is going to be equal to 4 times 8 plus 4 times 3. 4 times 3. A lot of people's first instinct is just to multiply the 4 times the 8. But no, you have to distribute the 4. You have to multiply it times the 8 and times the 3. This is right here. This is the distributive property in action right here. Distributive property in action. And then when you evaluate it, I'm going to show you in kind of a visual way why this works. But then when you evaluate it, 4 times 8, this is in a different color, 4 times 8 is 32. And then so we have 32 plus 4 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. And 32 plus 12 is equal to 44. That is also equal to 44. So you can get it either way, but when they want us to use the distributive law, you distribute the 4 first. Now let's think about why that happens. Let's visualize just what 8 plus 3 is. So let me draw 8 of something. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me draw it this, well, 6, 7, 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we're going to add to that, 3 of something, maybe the same thing. 1, 2, 3. So you can imagine this is what we have inside of the parentheses. We have 8 circles plus 3 circles. Now, when we're multiplying this whole thing times 4, what does that mean? Well, that means we're just going to add this to itself 4 times. So let me do that with the copy and paste. Copy and paste. Let me copy and then let me paste. There you go. That's 2. That's 1, 2, 3. And then we have 4. And we're going to add them all together. So this is literally what 4 times, right? We have it, let me go back to the drawing tool. We have it 1, 2, 3, 4 times this expression, which is 8 plus 3. Now, what is this thing over here? What is this thing over here? What is this thing over here? If you were to count all of this stuff, you would get 44. But what is this thing over here? Well, that's 8 added to itself 4 times. You can imagine you're adding all of these. So what's 8 added to itself 4 times? That is 4 times 8. So this is 4 times 8. And what is this over here in the orange? We have 1, 2, 3, 4 times, well, each time we have 3. So it's 4 times this right here. This right here is 4 times 3. So you see why the distributive property works. If you do 4 times 8 plus 3. You have to multiply when you, I guess you could imagine, duplicate the thing 4 times. Both the 8 and the 3 is getting duplicated 4 times, or it's being added to itself 4 times, and that's why we distribute the 4.
Okay, today you're going to take notes in your composition notebook about the distributive property. So you'll need your composition notebook, and then you are going to get a strip of paper that looks like this. Okay, first thing you're going to do is open your composition notebook to the table of contents. We should be on page 29, and we're going to label it distributive property. Label it page 29 and label the top distributive property again. Okay, now what we're going to do is you're going to take your strip of paper and we're going to fold along the dotted lines, but you have to fold it kind of in a specific way. So you're going to take the top that says solve and you're going to fold along the dotted line, but fold it towards you. So it's going to fold over like that. Once you get that folded, you're going to actually take the next part and fold it back along the folded line. So it's behind it. Then fold that towards you. And then fold back again. Okay, so when you're done, if you let it go, it kind of looks like an accordion. That's great. And the part that says solve, the back of that is actually going to be glued in. Right here, we're going to turn and glue it into our notebooks like that. But we're going to do that at the end. So we're going to write on it first and then glue it in. But know that it's going to be glued in right there, and you need to save room along here for us to write in your examples. Okay. I chose red, purple, pink, blue, and green. I'm going to start with the green, and if I have this folded, the front now should say put a, and there will be a blank. So what we're going to do is at the very top, not on the line, we're going to write step 1. So step 1 of the distributive property is going to be put a box around the number outside the parentheses. Okay, now that probably doesn't make much sense to you right now, so what we're going to do is, I'm going to give you an example. So our first example that we're going to do off to the side here is going to be 7 parentheses x plus 3 equals 77. Okay. Now we're going to use this and continue doing our steps down this way. But there's the first one. So just to get us started, I'm actually going to rewrite this because I want to use different colors on it to highlight things for you. So I'm going to write 7x plus 3 equals 77 one more time. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to my green marker, or my green pencil that says step 1, put a box around the number outside the parentheses. So here's my parentheses, the number outside is the 7, so I'm going to put a green box around the 7. Okay. Now we're going to go back to our foldable and we're going to open the accordion. So if I open this, my next step would go right here. The one just above step 1, I'm going to label step 2 and I'm going to use purple. So right above the purple, I'm going to write step 2. And for step 2, I'm going to write put a circle around each number inside the parentheses. Now it's really important at this step that when you circle the number, you always circle the number and the sign that is in front of it. Okay, that's a key part right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to my example up here. And so it says put a circle around each of the number inside the parentheses. So the X, and since there's nothing in front of the X, I'm just going to circle the X. Then it says the 3, but there is an addition sign in front of that. So I am going to circle the plus 3. Okay, that equals 77. Next, we're going to go back to our foldable, and right above step 2, you guessed it, step number 3, and I'm going to use blue for step number 3. So right above here, I'm going to write step 3. And this one is going to be multiply the boxed number by each circled number. So you're going to fill that in with multiply. Okay. So here's what that means. We're going to go back to our example. And we're going to multiply the 7 that's in our box. And we're going to multiply it by the X. But we're also going to take the 7 and multiply it by the positive 3. Okay? So when you do that, you get 7 times the X makes 7X. 7 times a positive 3 gives me a positive 21. And then I'm going to finish off my equation by just adding the equals 77. Okay. The colored part right here, that's called the distributive property. When you distribute the 7 with the X, and then you distribute the 7 with the positive 3. Okay. Now, if you look at this, this should look like a two-step equation that we've been working on in class. So we're going to go back to our foldable to step number 4. I'm going to continue with the red. So step number 4 at the top, it says rewrite the equation. I already did that, but rewrite the equation. And then step number 5 is going to be the top part right here. So you write step 5. Once you've rewritten the equation, you're going to solve your two-step equation just like we learned in class. Okay? So I'm going to go back to the equation and then I'm going to solve it for you. So I'm going to draw a line at the equal sign, put my pencil on my variable, and I look for any addition and subtraction, and I see a plus 21, so I will subtract 21 from both sides of the equation. Now, my 21, my add 21 and subtract 21 is going to cancel out. I'm going to carry down what's left over here, which is the 7x, and that equals 77 minus 21, which is 56. Now I'm going to go draw another line, put my pencil on my variable, and this says multiply by 7, so I'm going to divide by 7. Okay, and when I'm all done, my 7s are going to cancel out, so my answer will be x equals 8. Okay, now it's always good, go back. It's always good to check your answer. So I'm going to just go in my head and go, okay, 8 plus 3, 11. 11 times 7 is 77. So I know I did it correctly. Okay, so now what I want you guys to do is fold up your foldable and just kind of put it right there where it's going to be. And you should have room at the bottom because we're going to do 2 more examples right here. So I would just leave some room down here. So let's do our next example. It's going to be -6 parentheses x plus 6 equals -48. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this just because I want to use my colored pencils on it. So it's -6 x plus 6 equals -48. So step 1, if I follow my chart, was to put a box around the parentheses, or the number outside the parentheses. So I'm going to put a box right there. Then if I look at step number 2, it said circle each number inside the parentheses and remember to circle the sign that is in front of the number. So I'm circling my x, I'm circling my +6. Step 3 is to multiply the boxed number by each circled number. So this is the part where you're going to take the -6 times the x, and then the -6 times the +6. Okay? And then step 4, rewrite the equation. So if I come down here, I did -6 times x would be -6x. Now, a -6 times a +6 actually makes a -36 because they have different signs, so it's negative. And then I'm going to carry down the rest of my equation, equals -48. Now, it's step 5, which is solve the equation. Okay? So what I'm going to do now is draw my line at the equal sign, put my pencil on my variable, and look for any addition and subtraction. And I see that I have a subtract 36, so I will add 36 because you do the inverse. Okay, the 36's cancel out, so on this side of the equation, you are left with the -6x, so you carry the -6x down, and that equals, okay, got to remember integer rules here, -48 and a +36. Since those have different signs, we have to subtract them and keep the sign of the larger number. So we get 12 when we subtract, and since 48 is bigger, it's going to be -12. Now we continue on to do our second step. Draw another line at the equal sign, put your pencil on the variable. It says times -6. Well, the inverse would be to divide by -6 on both sides of the equation. Cancel out the 6's. You're left with x equals 12 divided by 6 is 2. Since these are both negative, that means your answer is positive 2. You can again check to see if you did it correctly. Plug in the 2 plus 6 is 8. 8 times negative 6 equals a negative 48, so we know we have done our work correctly. This one is going to be negative 18 equals negative 3 parentheses x minus 4. Now we chose this one specifically because it was written backwards. Notice the variable is on the right side of the equation, not on the left side this time. But we still solve it the exact same way. So I'm going to just rewrite this so I can use my colors. Okay, and I'm going to start with step 1. Again, it says put a box around the number outside the parentheses. So when I'm looking, here's my parentheses. The number outside is a negative 3. Okay, then I'm going to turn to step 2, which says put a circle around each number inside the parentheses. Be sure to include the sign that's in front of it. So I'm going to circle the x, and I'm going to circle the negative 4. Okay, step 3 is to multiply the boxed number by each of the circled numbers. I'm going to come over here, and I like doing this part. You get to make your little arrows. Negative 3 times the x, and negative 3 times negative 4. Okay. Then step 4 and step 5. Step 4 is to rewrite the equation. And once we rewrite the equation, we will solve to get the answer. So when I rewrite the equation, since the equals is over here, I'm just going to carry that down right now. So it's going to be negative 18 equals, and now I'm going to do the distributive property, where I'm going to do negative 3 times the x makes negative 3x. Now be careful on this part. Negative 3 times a negative 4 is actually going to make a positive 12. It's really important we know our integer rules. Okay, now step 5 is just to solve. So I'm going to take my pencil, I'm going to draw a line at the equal sign, put my pencil on my variable, which is now on the right side of the equation, but I still put my pencil there, and I see if there's any adding or subtracting on that side of the equation. And it says plus 12, so I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides of the equation. Okay, the 12s over here cancel. And on this side of the equation, I'm left with negative 3x. Be sure when you bring that down, you're bringing down the negative sign or the sign that's in front of it with it. And that equals, now you have to be careful, negative 18 and a negative 12. Since they're both negative, we're going to add them together, and they make negative 30. Okay, last step, draw a line at the equal sign, put your pencil on your variable, and this says multiply by negative 3, so I'm going to divide by negative 3, and my 3's are going to cancel, and I'm left with x equals, I know that 30 divided by 3 is 10, and it's going to be a positive 10 because these are both negative. And I box my answer. And the very last step is you're going to make sure you glue this in. So when you have it glued in, when you're doing your steps, you can just pull it out like that. And it should look like this when you're done. Now we'll pause the video for a little bit while the sub hands out the worksheet to you. Okay, so your worksheet, if we start at number 1, it is always a good idea, folks, to look over at the example that the worksheet gave you. So if you're having any questions, you can look back at the example or your notes. But for number 1, you are going to follow your steps. You can box what's outside the parentheses and circle what's inside. And then you're going to multiply the 3 times the x, and you're going to multiply the 3 times the positive 2. So I end up with 3x plus 6 equals 12. Once you have that, you need to solve it like a 2-step equation. Draw your line at the equal sign, put your pencil on your variable, look for any addition or subtraction, and there's a add 6, so we will subtract 6 because you always do the inverse operation. So cross out your 6's, carry down your 3x. 3x equals, you have a positive 12 and a negative 6. Since those are different signs, you subtract them. And it's going to be 6. Keep the sign of the larger number, so it's positive 6. Then draw your line at the equal sign. Put your pencil on your variable. Divide by the 3. Divide by the 3. Cross those out, and x equals 2. For the next one, I just want to do just a distributive property with you to review that part. I think you all should know how to solve the problems once you get them written. So you're going to, without the boxes and the circles, what you're going to do is you're going to do the 4 times the x, and then make sure you do 4 times negative 3. Okay? You don't have to put the boxes in the circles, but it is helpful while you're learning it. So 4 times x is 4x. 4 times negative 3 makes negative 12, so we're going to write it as minus 12. And then carry down the equals 8. Now, you're going to go ahead and draw your line and solve these, but I want to make sure that you guys know your work should be written out just like this, and then step by step like problem number 1. So each problem should have step by step looks like this. If you'd like a stamp, you need to have all the steps and all the work. Some of you will say, I know how to do it. I know the answer. It's really easy. I can do it in my head. But we are teaching you the process, not so much the answer at this point. So you need to be writing out the steps. Have fun.